Expedition 33 has broke the games industry. Damn straight it has. uh, by my count, best game ever made, actually. It's my favorite game ever made, so obviously that's a big statement. So let us continue. Let's have a look. LD, what do you got for us today, big guy?
Expedition 33 has broken the games industry. And if you guys have been keeping up on social media, it has continued to break things. Not only has this independent game coming from an unknown studio gone on to sell millions of copies worldwide, also being universally praised pretty much worldwide, but it has now become one of the most awarded games in the history of video games, standing toe-to-toe with games like Baldur's Gate 3 and Elden Ring.
Yeah, that's a good family of games to be in company with. If you're standing toe-to-toe with Baldur's Gate and Elden Ring, holy shit.
Now, while it was one of the most awarded games in the history of the medium until some of those awards were stripped from them, it turns out it's not just AAA these guys are threatening, but the entire industry. Quite an insane achievement, if I do say so myself, especially coming from a studio that apparently spent less than $10 million.
Wait, really? Okay, I full admission, I knew that they didn't spend like a huge amount, but I still thought it would have been in the ballpark of like 50 to 80 million for that game. But dude, that's insane. 10 million? Okay.
To make their game. And that most of their team found each other on social media, a team that's mostly comprised of people that had never...
Okay, I only knew about Lorraine. I knew Lorraine was found on like either a Discord server or a Reddit thread or something. He was found online. But the whole team? What?
Never even made a video game before outside of a handful of developers that were former Ubisoft developers, which is just more salt in the wound for AAA as these guys have seen more of their games.
So they had a bunch of... Oh, man. Holy shit. Okay.
Fail this year, and more of their former employees find success. Success that I am sure they wish they had. Expedition 33 represents what I think is a shift that started with Baldur's Gate 3. A movement away from traditional games, traditional studios, traditional design, something that is going to fundamentally shift how this entire industry operates, who they are making these games for, how they are making these games, and most importantly, how much these games cost.
Games need to be made for us again. Yeah. I think we can all attest to this. The male demographic ultimately is enormous compared to anything else. And I think too many games these days, while maybe not being made just for the... Games these days are made for far too many people, right? I think that's very apparent, and I think it's the reason why games are failing, and I think it's also the reason why they cost so much. Because in order to include everybody, you're obviously going to have to chuck up a huge budget. But I think Asmongold said this best, and I think a lot of people have quoted it after, and I fully agree, but a game made for everybody is a game made for nobody. And that's just accurate.
So today, I want to talk about how Expedition 33 broke the games industry. I want to talk about how they rewrote the rules on how games are made, how even their more recent controversies are going to have long-term impacts inside the games industry, and how through limitation, these guys found something that this games industry lost a long time ago. Character.
Get paid out instantly at halftime with Bitch's early
I
payout.
don't want to bet
US
my
basketball, and if your team's
money.
up by 12 plus points at halftime, we'll pay you out right then. Download the Bitch app and bet on US basketball today. R18, bet responsibly.
So as many of you might know by now, Expedition 33 won 9 awards at this year's Game Awards, becoming the most awarded game in the 12-year history that this show has been running. And honestly, I don't think anybody was surprised by it at all. This year has been an incredible year for games.
If you were surprised that this game won Game of the Year, there is something wrong with you. Now, I will say, I think that this year's Game Awards, when it comes to Expedition 33, was a really good Game Awards. However, I think that the sheer glazing that Expedition 33 got at the Game Awards was insane. Like, you're telling me you're having the Game of the Year winners singing their own pieces on stage at the start of the awards show. Bro.
Genuinely stacked. But Expedition 33 was just a dead ringer for every single category it was entered into because it
By the way, apologies if my voice sounds a bit scratchy. I'm still recovering from a cold, so you have to forgive me on that part.
really was just that good of a game. It absolutely deserved best narrative. It's one of the best written stories we've seen in years, full of grief, hope, mystery, suspense, and twists that I don't think anybody really saw coming. I think the writing really respected the audience. It trusted you. It didn't hold your hand, and it just opened up the more time you gave it, and it told a story that I just don't really think we see very often in video games.
Never. You literally I have never, even in like Final Fantasy games, I have never ever gone back to play it a second time and discovered more about the story, because you don't get everything from one playthrough. You can play, you might be able to play this 3 or 4 times without getting everything out of the game. I cannot like understate just how phenomenal the story writing is. It is phenomenal. And I say that as someone who really does not care for a huge amount of story writing. I care more so about combat, and generally I like my storytelling to be done through atmosphere. So like Elden Ring style storytelling, where the world tells the story as you're playing through it. But this game, oh my god, like I was hooked. Hook, line, and sinker, I tell you.
It also had some of the strongest voice performances of the year, a soundtrack that's been listened to over 400 million times since.
Bro, this was so disrespectful. Bro, you're gonna win Game of the Year and then also have them their own little segment. Fair enough.
Launch, and some of the most visually
Wait, what? Jesus Christ.
distinct art direction that we have seen in years. Across the board, this game delivered. Now, I can and honestly will make a few concessions. I do think that the Game Awards went a little overboard this year with Best Debut
Thank you.
Indie Game nomination. That one really didn't make a lot of sense, especially because this game technically
It has a publisher. Yeah, I think they probably could have had Best Indie Game, but Best Debut Indie I think should have gone to like someone else, because yeah, no. They should not. They could be considered indie. I think that's fair enough, but I don't think they should be considered debut indie. Okay, because that, like, yes, it is their first game, but also they have a publisher. Like,
as a publisher, and as much as I love Expedition 33, I don't think it really deserved Best RPG over Kingdom Come Deliverance.
that one, I don't know. Like, Kingdom Come, I think this is down to personal preference, to be honest, because I played Kingdom Come as well. And the reason why I voted Expedition 33 is because there are 3 layers of main characters, right? You're playing, well, at least you, the player, your POV for most of the game is Verso. You're playing as Verso or Gustav, I suppose. I'm just going to connect the two because they're essentially the same character. They have mostly the same role. Not in terms of actual, like, behavior, but you know what I mean. For game reasons, they're the same character. If you have Verso, Gustav, as they are the main character in this story, right? This story that you are playing in, that you are experiencing, they are the main character, right? But for the play, for your story, for the story of you, for your experiences, Mael is the main character. She is the one who is like essentially the lead in the story. However, in all of it, across all things, the main character is Child Verso. And I think this is what gets people caught up in so many arguments about the final endings, because people continuously talk about what ending's the good ending and argue back and forth and blah 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 blah. And while I'm not going to get into it, I want you guys to realize that Verso that we see in game is not the person like who is suffering from the Mael ending. It is Little Verso. Little Verso, the child, is the one who's suffering. Obviously Verso doesn't want to live, but Verso from the little guy, he's the one who's suffering, and he's the main character in all of it. So it's so bizarre, like how they managed to do that. Put 3 layers of roleplay without really butting heads with any of it. And I just think that's amazing.
I mean, in that game, you literally play as Henry. You play that character in a way that almost no other RPG even tries to attempt. With that said, without a doubt, unanimously and ubiquitously,
I will just say, though, I fully agree with his statement, though. Playing as Henry is an experience, man. Playing as Henry is a fucking experience. For those of you who genuinely enjoyed Expedition 33, and if you have the funds for it, highly recommend Kingdom Come Deliverance. I really, really do. And I give it a play, and then give it a second play. It is a very good game.
3 was the best game of the year. That was obvious the moment that this game launched, and it became clear after a first-time studio blew past 3 million, then 5 million, and now 6 million copies sold after the Game Awards. This level of success and recognition is usually reserved for AAA franchises and industry veterans, not for first-time studios, and that's where Expedition 33 really starts to tear at the seams of the games industry.
The only other indie development company that I could have seen doing this would have been the team from Team Cherry. Team Cherry would be the only other company that could get this recognition.
Because in their eyes, this shouldn't have happened. I mean, outside of a handful of developers at Sandfall Interactive, mostly just a couple of former Ubisoft developers, nearly every single person on that 30-person team never made a game before. Hell, most of them have never even worked in the games industry before.
Really?
The game's writer,
What?
Jen, she had never had any of her writing.
Wait, hold on. Is this the resume? Lead writer, Jennifer. Lead writer, favorite game. Wait, so they have their favorite games instead of like their credentials? Favorite games: Hollow Knight, God of War, Civ 6, Elden Ring. Yo, these guys are based as fuck. Yo, Elden Ring, Kingdom Hearts. Oh, mate, nah, these guys, the Super Smash Bros, Hades, Pokemon, bro, these guys are based.
Nearly every single person on that 30.
Yo, nah. Yo, we've even got variety. How do you go from City Skylines to GTA and Hearthstone, Jerome? What are you made of, brother?
Person team never made a game before. Hell, most of them have never even worked in the games industry.
We've got Minecraft, Zelda, Breath of the Wild, and Control, an open world guru, Tomb Raider, Assassin's Creed, and oh fuck, dude, Carla's one with us. Favorite games: Dishonored, League of Legends, The Order, 1886, and BioShock. Oh man.
before. The game's writer, Jen,
Oh my god. Yo, ultimate chicken horse. Yo.
she had never had any of her writing published. She was an investment banker that they found on Reddit. Same thing goes for the
Wait, really? Yo, Jen.
composer, somebody that they just found on a random music site. The game's producer and co-founder came from the French equivalent of Uber, and nearly every other developer on the team is either a fresh graduate or somebody that has never worked in game development at all.
Good. I think we need more like, dude. Guion, I don't know how he managed to put together the team that he has, but Guion, do it again. Do it again.
I mean, even Guillaume Broche, the studio's founder and creative director, yes, he worked at Ubisoft, but he worked in marketing, not game development.
Yo, Guillaume, what? Hey, Guillaume, make another game.
That was not his discipline. He was self-taught. He learned by watching YouTube tutorials, something that he picked up out of boredom while he was working at Ubisoft.
So they said ex-Ubisoft employees. So, wait a minute. So, oh, man.
So what we end up with is essentially a ragtag group of misfits making one of the most recognized games in the industry. People who have never been in game development before. I mean, I've even seen claims that some of the game's animators were found on YouTube, and they've never even worked a project full time.
I didn't know. Like, I thought I knew the depths that this group went to. I didn't know any of this. What?
And in this industry, none of this makes any sense. It goes against every single convention. It goes against reality in a lot of cases. Or it's just going to come with the same assumption, which is that all of this inexperience and all this lack of investment means inefficiency. And that inefficiency means higher experience, and all this lack of investment means inefficiency.
Oh, the S, yeah.
And that inefficiency means higher cost, but none of that checks out because this game that we initially thought was made for less than $50 million was in reality made for less than $10 million. GameSpot mentioned this earlier in an article titled Claire Obscure Expedition 33 budget was remarkably small, where Eddie Mockick writes, Claire Obscure Expedition 33 has been one of 2025's breakout success stories in gaming, and it was developed on a relatively small budget, apparently. The New York Times reports that the budget was less than $10 million.
Less than $10 million. Bro, what? Wow. That's insane. No, that's actually insane. To be able to put out a game like Claire Obscure, dude, nah, Guillaume's, or whoever was the director for funding, for where the money was going, you need to put them on every single fucking game. Oh my god.
There's crediting the information to the developer Sandfall. The report added that the team conserved resources by purposefully avoiding making an open world setup in favor of making Expedition 33 a turn-based game. Sandfall's Guillaume Broche said that the studio has the right technology to make those games with a relatively small team, and he hopes to see more like it from other studios. Games like this are coming. We are lucky to be early, he said.
Guillaume, you don't need to be humble, mate. I hate to tell you this, Guillaume, but you are one talented son of a bitch. You are a talented motherfucker. Brother, next to no one is able to pump out a game like this. That is the reason why you won Game of the Year. No one stands up to this. I mean, Nintendo even tried to get you by having their own, like, person come out and sing on the stage, and even then that didn't work.
Broche did not elaborate on what technology he was referring to. GameSpot has contacted Sandfall for further details. Guys, I have been ripping into the games industry for the better part of a year, talking about how these studios do not need to be spending $300 or $400 million to make these games, but even I am going to say, to see a game like Expedition 33 made for less than $10 million is just insane, especially given the experience level of this team. Because what that's telling us is that while this team may not have traditional credentials, they were clearly committed, disciplined, and extremely talented. You do not pull this off by accident. You do not stumble into this kind of efficiency.
Fuck no, you don't. And you're not, dude. The thing is, that's what they're saying. They're like, oh yeah, we did this. You know, anyone else get fuck off. No, you can't. You are a bunch of the most talented fuckers we have in this industry right now. You make another fucking game.
And I know that the media has been throwing accusations at Sandfall, trying to make sense of these guys, basically, ever since the moment that the game took off. First, it was, well, it's not actually a 32-person team. They outsourced everything. But now I'm even struggling to see that and make sense of that at all, because if you look at this game's...
If it was made by more people than the 30 that they really gave, the 10 million doesn't make sense anymore. That's the problem.
Budget, you don't outsource a meaningful amount of this game and ship it like you did for under $10 million. That number only tracks if the core team was doing most of the heavy lifting themselves.
And it sounds like they fucking were. And that's why the people who actually cared about this fucking game were in the studio making the fucking game.
And at the end of the article, you know, the writer can't even help themselves. Broche didn't elaborate on what technology they were using. Excuse me, sir. Are you using the technology that we have all deemed evil and will cancel you over? Quite literally writing articles.
Oh my god. You know, the fact that you can see Guillaume working on it in the literal thing that they made to present to people is kind of insane. But
saying that that's exactly what our plan is going to be. I don't know why these guys are baiting, especially since players have had all the answers to this months earlier when leftover placeholder assets were found in the game, essentially like right after the game had launched. Assets, by the way, that came from Unreal Engine 5 tools, not Gen AI directly.
Exactly.
Something that the team did not mean to ship with and immediately patched out the moment that it was found. But, you know, the damage was already done. Here's the media yet again spinning it up, tying it to the broader AI panic, dragging it back up into conversation with the Divinity and Larian discourse. Now suddenly Expedition...
I want people to realize as well, almost all games, because I know quite a few game developers, and maybe this doesn't go for all game developers, but I know it goes for most. Game developers use AI assets a shit ton as placeholders, and then what happens is you have your AI placeholder. A artist then will view that placeholder, make up some sort of artwork for it, and then they place it in place of the placeholder, right? Placeholder gets deleted, all done and through. It's just something they forgot. And almost every gaming company does this, right? This is not an uncommon thing. Using AI-generated stuff as placeholder work is common. It's a tool. It's common stuff in the games industry and has been for like many, many years now.
33 is part of this wide controversy that it never actually invited, that then snowballed into the Indie Awards just recently getting involved and stripping Expedition 33 of its awards, making them out to look like a liar, something that I genuinely would not lose sleep over if I was Sandfall. This is the same group that stripped another developer of their recognition because the company that was manufacturing the cartridges that their games were printed on were tangentially connected to a defense contractor. It's all performative. These people are an absolute joke. I think with both these developers and these writers...
Yeah, Guillaume, rest of the Expedition 33 team, we don't give a flying fuck about you guys doing what you're doing. Just make another game, please, Guillaume. You have a small rest, have a small break, drink in the success, and come back and hit us with another game. Like, I don't care if it's as big as Expedition 33, but I want another game from you guys. I want another game from you guys, and I'll be happy to cough up, you know, like because you were charging me, I think it was $50, $40 or $50 for Clear Obscure, right? That's my money, by the way, not your money. Your money, it's like, you know, like half that maybe. I don't know, but Guillaume, listen to me, brother. I'll be happy to cough up, you know, that $70 bullshit that people are unhappy to pay. For a game as good as this, I'll be happy to pay that. What you've done, Gil, and the rest of Samful, you now stand in the grand archives of game developers who the players can get behind and trust. So that you have infamous people, you have Miyazaki, right? You have the team at Baldur's Gate, and now you have Guillaume and Samful Interactive. Motherfucker, you can put a price on your game and people will pay it. That is just where you are now. Fucking make another game.
Are actually afraid of is much simpler than what they're letting on right now. Games like Expedition 33 or studios like Larian risk creating a use case for AI that they can't easily shut down, because it's easy to get people riled up over AI slop, over Call of Duty or Battlefield selling generated cosmetics. That's clean outrage. It's very predictable. But when a studio delivers a game of real quality, real care, real value, and it tops the charts, it wins awards, and players love it, well, selling that same narrative is going to get a lot harder.
Yeah.
I think that there has been this overwhelming, desperate desire for Expedition 33 to just be this impossible game, something that the industry can just explain away because of its quality, because of how it was made, because of who it was made for.
It's very fucking simple. They made a game for players and people playing it. It's very fucking simple. They clearly made this game for a male demographic, for people who like to self-insert, for people who want to go on an adventure, and they made it to the best capabilities that they could. As they said, they conserved resources by not giving it a proper Final Fantasy-esque combat system. They gave it a turn-based system, which made everything very fucking easy to balance. The only thing you would need to tweak are the numbers. There's no need to tweak timing or parrying, or direct moves, or like how these moves can tie into each other. You don't need to hire too many game testers to really go through all that. This was made for us, for you, for me, for everyone who actually plays video games. And it was, I mean, you can fucking tell. Like, look, I hate to tell you this. It is one dude surrounded by a bunch of women. Well, and Minoko, but Minoko's a dog, so. And he's also the homie. And you know what the best part about this is, too? I hate to tell you it, game devs out there. Women actually like to view other hot women in their video games. I hate to tell you this, but if you go on to Twitch and you scroll through the forums, I guess, or the posts regarding Expedition 33, you will see that that women who play this game were stripping down their characters and putting swimsuits on them just as much as everyone else. At the end of the day, most people like an attractive lady on the screen. We do not want a rotund hog on the screen. Alright? The only thing that should be rotund should be Esker. And that's because that motherfucker's adorable. He can get away with it.
Or this is unapologetically a game for gamers, for JRPG fans and turn-based fans. It launched at $50 and then went on sale day one for $40, then went back on sale after they won the Game Awards, and then they even added free DLC, knowing full well that players would have paid for it. There was just nothing weird about.
Listen to me. I would have sunk a whole nother equivalent of the game cost into that. I don't give a shit. You think I'm giving a shit? Like, bruh.
This game from the player's side. Nothing cynical, nothing exploitative, and nothing really strange from the developer side either. And in this industry, that just doesn't fit. Expedition 33, and more importantly, Sandfall Interactive, represent this overwhelming threat to the games industry, because for all intents and purposes, this was a AAA game. Or at least what...
I'm glad someone else said it. If this had a collector's... well, no. Restate. If the next game they make has a collector's edition, I have nearly no doubt in my mind that it will stand on par with Elden Ring in terms of collector's edition sales. Your 18 inches of Mesmer is going to turn into 5 inches of Verso. My bad, bro. My bad.
AAA used to mean to a lot of people before a lot of those expectations got sanded down to nothing. It looks like one, it plays like one, it sounds like one, it feels like one. And for a team like this, to pull that off, to be recognized the way that they are in this industry, to be talked about the way they are, while having next to no traditional experience, all the while spending less than $10 million to make this game, that is brutal. Because by doing that, you didn't just succeed, you just made the entire industry look incompetent.
It's hard for you guys to really, because back before I met the people who I met and now know who I know, I was very much like you guys, where I could only scope the very foggy glass of the games industry outside looking in. I'm going to put on the record, doing this, pulling out Clear Obscure with the amount of funds they had is impossible by most standards. It is, you are counting every cent you are using, and you are using every cent to the highest efficiency you possibly can. No one is slacking off while making this, and everyone is working as hard as they can. I cannot understate just how hard it is to put out a game like this. It is impossible with $10 million, and they've done it.
I mean, we already knew that at some level, but my God, Expedition 33 didn't outsell Battlefield, Call of Duty, Monster Hunter, or Borderlands, but it stood next to them. It occupied the same space, the same conversation, while spending, what, 2% of what those games cost to make, with a team that, for the most part, had never even made a game before. Once a game like this exists, the usual excuse is just stop holding up anymore. And when that happens, the conversation stops being about the game. It starts being about everything else around it.
It's off, man.
If I am an investor at one of these massive publishers and I'm watching my massive corporation get completely finessed by a game that spent 2% of the budget with 2% of the people, and the vast majority of them have no idea what they're actually doing, I'm going to have a lot of questions. A lot of questions. And I guarantee a lot of these CEOs' ears are ringing right now, because if you look at the year that we've seen for AAA, it's been rough. Like, one of the worst years that I've ever seen.
It is the worst year that they've ever seen. I'm pretty sure it has been the worst year for sales for AAA since 1995. I'm fairly certain of that. I think that was in one of the videos that we were looking at earlier this week. Yeah, 1998. 1995, 1990, yeah, 1995.
I mean, outside of Nintendo, which is basically a cult, Battlefield and Ghost of Yotai, maybe? I guess we could probably throw Arc Raiders into that mix, but I don't know if you want to call that one a AAA game or not. I guess it is.
I don't think so, bro, to be honest. I don't know. This is the problem again with AAAs, because I think a lot of the games that we don't consider AAA could be AAA games. There needs to be an actual definition for it, not just the overall feel of the community. Like, yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. Outside of that, I don't think many of these guys have been able to hit their sales targets. I mean, Borderlands 4 barely ran. Call of Duty, woof. Assassin's Creed, Monster Hunter fell off of a cliff. Xbox has had one of the worst years that I've ever seen a single publisher have. Like, it has been brutal for these guys. We have an entire graveyard this year.
The graveyard was there, and it has gotten bigger, ladies and gentlemen. Honestly, like, I think that AAA games need to, or AAA companies, what they need to do is they need to divide their companies up, and every single, like, little bit, I suppose, if you will, bit of the company that you divide up needs to make a game on their own. Every single one. And it's not going to be a big game. It's not going to be the next Ubisoft release. It just needs to be a game. They then release all of their games. Let's say you have 300 employees. You have 30 people per team, like the Obscure. So you've got 10 different games that come out. The games are all released at the same time. The games will then, like, undergo judgment by the gaming community. The top 3 games that win, that get the most playtime, the most attention, the most love, they can go through to the next round. The bottom, like, I don't know, 3 they're fired, they're gone. Sorry, but if you're not gonna put out a good game, then I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. And then we continue, and we just keep going on and on till we have, around 60, 70 employees left, and then we pump out a banger. Seems simple to me.
Meanwhile, every success that we've seen has been either independent, indie, or AA, which is just crazy. And when you have a game that shows up that's this transformative, this impactful, this successful, and it's made with so few resources, well, these guys are essentially an invasive species.
Yeah, that's accurate. Yep, they're definitely definitely the carp. Absolutely. Yeah.
They're messing up everything for everybody else because these guys have been sitting around the entire time telling us that they have to charge more for games. We heard about it over the last 2 years. $100 games, got to have $100 games. Guys, you don't understand. These budgets just...
You don't. There's so much money wasted in the industry, bro. Like, you don't have to have $100 games. You're gonna have a $10 million game. And not even $10 million. And it does better than all of you fuckers.
Keep going up. Inflation is rising. But then all of a sudden we have a game that comes out that looks better, plays better, charges less, and was made with less money. That completely rewires perception. The other thing that I think is happening that makes this even more dangerous for AAA is that these guys are essentially normalizing the unknown studio in the eyes of consumers.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are used to buying from the same companies. They're used to buying the same names, the same franchises.
Yeah. If you guys weren't around, like, gaming at least, but if you guys were around 20-ish years ago, 20 to around 10 years ago, there was... I'll take Blizzard as an example, right? Blizzard had I want to say almost a cultured, like, fan base that would go rabid every single time a Blizzard game would come out. And it was because Blizzard was the game studio. They were the From Software of those ages, right? So every time Blizzard announced a new game, everyone was on board. And it was the same going back and back and back, further and further. You had game studios that were just the studio. If you heard that they were releasing that, like, a game in the coming few months or the coming few years or whatever, it didn't matter what you did, what you had to sacrifice, you were going to get your hands on that game. Excuse me, goddamn. And that's just kind of the way it is and kind of the way it was. And it was just insane. And, like, back then, it was actually unhealthy, to be honest. It was unhealthy.
And now all of a sudden we have these companies that are coming in here that are disrupting things that are actually starting to look a lot more consistent and a lot more trustworthy than the names of the games that they've been buying for years.
Yep. So let's just immediately chuck out some that have grown on us. Let's just chuck out some. Let's chuck out Team Cherry. If they release a game, I'm going to buy it. Let's chuck out the team at Hades. If they make a game, I'm more than likely going to buy it. If someone from Larian Studios chucks out a game, I'm going to be getting it. If someone from Samful Interactive makes a game, you bet your ass I'm fucking getting it. Like,
And that is incredibly dangerous for a lot of these companies because their name is largely what's made them all their money. That trust that they've built over the years is what's made them all of their money. If you lose that trust and now all of a sudden players are starting to favor companies that they've never heard of before, well, that completely flips everything on its head.
Players more and more these days are actually looking at least from my perspective, and I think from quite a lot of you guys' perspectives as well, are looking at the actual individual game quality rather than the studio who made it. Now, don't get me wrong, as I said, there are studios who, if they make a game, I am just going to buy it. That's just kind of how it is. Oh, Slay the Spire would be another. The people who made Slay the Spire, they would be another company that I'm going to buy from. Also, the people who made Risk of Rain, another one. But these days, even then, there are people who just look at the game. And I think this is a huge example when it comes with Elden Ring Night Rain. Night Rain had obviously far fewer people like get it than Elden Ring, because it's just not the traditional FromSoft formula. Whereas like 3 or 4 years ago, no, not 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, if From Software had bought out Elden Ring Night Rain after Dark Souls 3, I think you would have seen same people amount, get the game as Elden Ring. And the reason why is just because back then, 5 or 6 years ago, the attitude towards game studios was still that it was made by this company, I have to get it, sort of like mentality, if you would.
And that makes a lot of sense when you think about it. Because the funny thing is that if we rewind the clock, where did a lot of this trust come from? Well, it came from the fact that a lot of these studios, these smaller studios that are breaking out and having insane success right now, they used to be these AAA studios. They're coming from the same origins. They used to be these scrappy studios.
Yep.
And I think that they don't realize yet that it's the struggle that's making these studios so successful. It's the limitations of these studios that are leading them to make better games.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the games industry forgot that struggle isn't a flaw. It's necessary.
Yeah.
When I keep going back over...
Sorry to interrupt you, LD, but I want to give massive props, a huge amount of thanks to Charlie Moist Critical, because to my knowledge, he was on the Expedition 33 scope before anyone else. I had never heard of the game until he made a video about having his eyes on it. And if he didn't make that video, I don't think I would have gotten it, because I just didn't know. But dude, huge shout out to Critical, because I would not have known. Some
of the successes of some of these smaller games, I always end up getting stuck on the same question. At some point, it just hits me, and I'm just like, how the hell did you guys do this? Where did you find the time? How did you find the money? Why did you take the risk when all...
So this is I haven't played the DLC yet. Is there DLC spoilers? Because
the odds were against you, and in a lot of cases, I can't really explain that, so I just...
This pretty much lines up exactly with what we sort of understand from Expedition 33 lore, isn't it? Where Claire's creations are very to the point and do things with ruthless efficiency. Renoir's creations have layers and layers of meaning. Aileen's drafts are extremely realistic, because she's the best painter in their family. She's the only one who can paint to a degree that is unsettlingly real. And then Verso's like creations are all very childlike and very, very fun and adventurous.
Turn it into an
Kind of like SK.
underdog story, or I just point to something else. I
Holy, is that just a lot of SKs?
talk about how all these games have their own little moment, like how Expedition 33 landed in a genre that was overdue for its own it game, how Megabonk just had this viral push, how Schedule 1 blew up because of streamers latching onto it. And you can look at that and you can say, well, that explains how people found it, but I think that's where we get stuck, myself included. We fixate on the moment, the timing, the hook, the part that looks repeatable. And the more that I've thought about it this year, the clearer it's become that none of that actually matters if the game itself isn't good enough to be able to hold people once they're there. These moments do not create success, they expose it. So the real question is, how are teams that we have never heard of making games that feel this focused, this confident, and this complete?
It's because they haven't made a game before. They dive in head first, just wanting to make a game. And I think that's been forgotten in literally all of the other game studios that he aforementioned. Like, you're talking your Ubisofts, you're talking your EAs, you're talking your Blizzards. These people forget how to make a good video game because they've done it for so long. And yet, here we are. They just dive in, they're passionate, clearly passionate, and they want to make a good fucking game.
How are games that would have been ignored 10 years ago suddenly resonating with players so hard? People are playing these games, they're not bouncing off of them, they keep going, they finish them, they talk about them, they recommend them, and once you start seeing that, the question starts to narrow. What separates these developers from the rest of the industry? And the answer that keeps coming up isn't luck, isn't timing, it's restraint. Or more specifically, limitations. Okay, so let's take Sandfall as the obvious example here. They had very little funding and next to no
Okay, guys, tomorrow, specifically, I am going to take, I'm going to take tomorrow off from recording, and doing streaming and everything, to, play the DLC of this game. I think that's what I'm going to do tomorrow.
Experience. Most
So
people
just
at the
heads up for
studio
that.
had no idea how to make a game, lead a game, or write for a game, none of it. So how do you end up with something this good under those conditions?
I know, I'm well aware that a great many of you want me to stream the DLC, and, well, I appreciate that. You gotta understand that from my perspective, this is a game that I love this game, man. I can throw my entire self into it, and I wouldn't trade that for the world. You know, it's been near enough for me a decade since I found a game like that. Like, just to give you an idea of how far back this goes, okay? My previous most favorite game ever made was Ratchet and Clank Up Your Arsenal. That shit was released in like 2004 or 5 or 6, something like that. It's been 20 years. That's longer than some of you have been alive watching this video. It's nearly older than me. But it's been 20 years. So I'm going to not be streaming it. I apologize, but it's for me, that experience of being able to sit alone in my room with my game is nothing could purchase that off of me. Nothing. You know, nothing. I could have 10, 20, 30,000 people watching me play it live, giving me a huge amount of cash through subs, through gifts, through everything. It wouldn't change anything. Nothing can take that away from me. I'm sorry. It's just not going to happen.
Well, the only way that you're ever going to make up for what you lack, it's the same as any rich man, poor man story: work ethic, obsession, and talent. And not in a mythical sense, but in a willingness to just grind until something clicks. I'm sure that they have a couple of savants that are over on that team, But I don't think that's the point. I think the real difference is that they wanted it badly enough that they applied themselves completely. They didn't have the resources. They didn't have the institutional knowledge. So they stayed disciplined. They taught themselves. And probably more importantly, they taught each other. And I think that that's what made this game have such a clear, authentic voice, from its music to the art direction to the combat systems. This feels like a group of people that were constantly talking, supporting each other, course correcting, and learning together because, well, they didn't have any other option. And I can't help but feel like that's just how game development used to work, but likely doesn't for a lot of these bigger companies.
And in fact, we know this now, that it's not the way that this works, because game companies these days have divisions of creators who all sit with each other and talk, while there's another group, there's another group, there's another group, right? But they all do the same things. You have the writers all together, you have the directors all together, you have the gameplay, you have the, I don't know, the music, and it's all disconnected. They need to be working in the same fucking room.
Think about how much the games industry has changed in a relatively short amount of time. I mean, the games industry is only about 50 years old right now. And when it started, people weren't making games because there was money in it. There wasn't any money in it. They were making games because they wanted to. There wasn't a clear career path. You couldn't go to school for game design. Graphic design and digital art weren't even established fields yet. People were doing everything themselves because they had to, because they loved it, and also because there was no other way. Now,
I think this is a very good point, because quite frankly, I think having your back against the wall, like, for a lot of people, makes you perform better. And I think Clear Obscure probably was one of those things where, to my knowledge, this was everyone's first attempt, or the majority of people's first attempt, right? They had a few million in cash, and they said, we have to make this work, otherwise we're done. They fucking made it work. Right? That is the storyline I'm getting. We have a bunch of people who have never worked on a game. We have a bunch of people who are doing jobs that they probably don't like. They're taking a risk, they're leaving their jobs, and they're going and working on this game and making it the best they can. And look at it. Look at what we got. Like,
time, it turned into a real industry.
Having a cushion like $400 million, I would love to say, brings carelessness.
A big one, and along the way, priorities shifted, and it became less about the work itself and more about efficiency, more about scale, more about business optimization. And in that transition, a lot of the friction that forced people to be creative and collaborative just disappeared. And that's the contrast that I keep coming back to when I look at games like Expedition 33 or a lot of the indie successes that we've seen in 2025. If you look at the games industry right now, all these guys are chasing games with no friction, no restraint, no limitations. Budgets are completely out of control, all in service of just removing as much resistance from the process as possible, all in an attempt to make these games faster with bigger teams, more money, more outsourcing. The idea that you can just throw enough resources at a problem and that game is just going to magically come together, but that's not what's actually happening. What's happening in the end is that you're coming up with a lot of games that just have no clear creative voice, because whenever these studios are hitting a problem or they find something that they don't understand, what they do instead is they just throw more developers at that problem. They don't actually try to learn how to solve it. They don't slow down and try to figure it out. They just buy the solution. They outsource it. They plug it with another department, another contractor, another tool.
Exactly. And I want to just add on to this part, because I think this is a very good example of this. During the PlayStation 2 era, if you guys remember your storage device cards, the little storage device card that you would put into the front of your PlayStation so you could save your game data, right? Those things held 16 megabytes of data. 16 megs, not 16 gigs, 16 megs. Games back then were made in order to accompany this sort of data amount. But the problem is, when they were making games back then, you already had games that were scaling up to like 70 megabytes, 100 megabytes, 500 megabytes of data, which a PlayStation 2 just straight up couldn't save, couldn't run, couldn't do it. So what they did is they worked tirelessly to make the coding as perfected as possible so they could get it beneath that 16 megabyte mark. That is how it worked, right? And like the fact that they were able to do it is just insane. Like,
So instead of collaboration, instead of learning, instead of people actually talking through their problems, we just get silos. We get everybody that is locked into their own discipline. Everybody is good at one narrow thing, and almost nobody has a broader understanding of how the game is supposed to feel.
exactly. I think that's also a huge amount of problems because the game writers, obviously, in these bigger studios, are writing like for the game, but they have no idea how their writing affects what the game actually does. And I think that goes true with the same for the audio designers, the analysts, the like everyone involved, because no one's talking with each other. No one has a fucking clue. No one has a clue.
Play or come together as a whole. And on top of that, this industry has started leaning harder and harder into raw hardware power, faster GPUs, more memory, bigger headroom, just so they don't have to worry about the technical constraints or the performance issues anymore. And once you do that, now all of a sudden the game itself isn't even pushing back anymore. Mistakes aren't getting punished. You don't have to solve the problems cleanly, and you don't even have to be careful. You can just brute force your way through a lot of your bad decisions because the hardware will carry it. Obviously, we've learned that that's definitely not the case with most of these games nowadays, but I don't think that just killed optimization. I think it bled straight into art direction. Everybody's been chasing photorealism. Everybody's been chasing high fidelity. Everybody has.
Nobody likes seriously bad graphics. No one likes seriously bad graphics. But although people will say, hey, this game looks amazing, it looks so real, no one gives a flying fuck if the game is not good. If you make a game that is piss poor and doesn't play well, and then you give it like the fucking UE5 like operating, you know, 1-to-1 version of this fucking coin here, and this looks exactly like it does in real life, you know how much of a fuck I give about that? Zero. Fucking zero.
To look expensive, they have to look detailed and hyper accurate, and in that process a lot of these games just stop looking distinct. I mean, honestly, 90% of games right now look either like Call of Duty or Fortnite. That sameness isn't accidental. It's just a
it's so stupid. Like, can we get some good looking games again? Can we get something like Clair Obscur? Because Clair Obscur, while it is realistic, it is not anything close to realistic. Like, they used realism as a base portrait and then added a bunch of humbo jumbo on the top of it. And look what we got. Like, we got something that looks amazing. I'll give you another one that's art style I think is just absolutely phenomenal. Sea of Thieves. Sea of Thieves, especially the water. And even the character design, the world as well, it feels realistic. It is not realistic in the slightest. It's not even close, but it feels it. And that's because there's a whole load of things that help you along the way when you know, making it feel realistic, to be fair. There's all the very, very well designed, like, audio, very well designed. You know, nothing's too insane. Even the supernatural stuff isn't even too insane, but I genuinely rate Sea of Thieves art style hugely.
byproduct of this industry trying to optimize for scale instead of clarity or creativity. If we actually go back to earlier console generations, we see a lot more artistic creativity and a lot more mechanical
Ratchet and Clank, especially, huge art style
experimentation, and that's not because the developers were smarter, but it's because they were just boxed in. They had hardware limits, knowledge limits, tool limits. You had to work around your problems instead of past them, and that forced a lot of people to be inventive. You see the same thing in indie today because those limitations are still there. Some of them are self-imposed, sure, smaller teams, smaller budgets, and people that are doing 5 jobs at once, but the pressure is still real. They don't get to waste time. They don't get to bloat systems. They have to make decisions, and they have to commit to them. Now let's compare that to an industry that is actively trying to erase its limits, bigger teams, bigger budgets, more tools. Now we add AI on top of that, not used as a tool, not used as assistance, but instead used as insulation, a way for them to just avoid friction altogether. And I don't think that creativity comes from ease of access. I don't think it comes from convenience. I think it comes from
Oh, that's an interesting pick, Dos. Okay.
trial and error, from desperation, from trying to make something work when it definitely shouldn't, from caring enough to wrestle with the problem instead of just trying to smooth it over. And I think that's why studios like Sandfall scare people. That's why indie and independent studios scare people, because these guys care enough to make it happen under any condition.
Yep.
These guys thrive on friction. Their success is built on challenge, not running from it. The enemy of art is the absence of limitations, Orson Welles. And I think that's true. I think the scrappier the development team, the more likely they are to want it more than anybody else,
Absolutely.
because these guys, their backs are up against the wall. They don't have a lot of options. They don't have a lot of resources. They don't have a lot of experience. And to be able to make a game, I mean, to even just make sure that game even exists, you have to really want it.
Yeah, fuck
And
yeah,
I think
dude.
that desire to really want it makes a massive difference. Beyond that, the other part I think really plays a role into this is just how compartmentalized a lot of these companies have gotten over the years.
What am I saying here? Like, I'm telling you, I know it, bro. I'm actually gonna sound like I'm fucking enchanted or something, dude. I cannot understate to you just how bad compartmentalization is. It is so bad. It limits creativity, it limits ideas, and it limits ideas getting out into other areas. If someone has good ideas, you don't tell them to shut the fuck up. Why would you do that?
I mean, Guillaume Broche, when he was talking about how basically every single developer at Sandfall, while working on Expedition 33, had to wear multiple hats. Each one of these guys had to do all kinds of different roles because they just didn't have enough people or enough experience. So everybody was essentially learning every part of game development all at the exact same time.
Yep.
That makes for a much more clear creative vision because everybody is essentially
The other thing, actually, and I'm going to bring this up, and this is more of a psychology thing. Creative people, when they are forced into the exact same thing over and over, do fucking worse by a mile. Their creative chops can't get out, their ability to express themselves can't get out in their art, and they just stale. They become stale, they just rot. And I hope it's not true for all the other things, but I mean, who fucking knows? But I really hope not. I really hope not.
touched every single part of the game. And when you look at the AAA side of this industry, while like these games are consumer products, they are still works of art at the exact same time.
Yes, they
and
are.
the more you optimize your business and corporate
I would appreciate it more, to be honest. I think if consumer product was pushed to the side in favor of art, because I think in turn, art as a whole is probably a better term to describe video games. Like, probably not in the financial world, almost certainly not in the financial world, and probably not in terms of, like, probably consumer requirements and consumer, benefits. But in terms of getting a stable flow of good games, I think calling them, like, widely as art rather than consumer products would be a much better way for the games industry.
your business and you compartmentalize all of these different roles within your company, well, now all of a sudden, all those separate roles, whether it's your concept artists or your riggers or whoever it is, your combat designers, all these guys, well, none of these guys are talking. None of these guys are involved. None of these guys even
Exactly.
understand one another's positions because they've never even had to work in those positions anymore. And if you think about it, when I look at some of the best games that I've seen just this last year, most of these studios, they seem a lot more like families than they do like companies. And I think that there's something in that. I think there's something in that bleeding over of roles and that collaboration and communication behind a lot of these companies. But I think a lot of it is born from restriction.
Yeah.
That's the thing that
I mean, let's put it like this. Can you see anyone but Clear Obscure Expedition 33's team working on Clear Obscure Expedition 33? Can you see anyone who isn't from Larian working on Baldur's Gate or Divinity? I can't. Like, I can't even begin to imagine Blizzard, Ubisoft, EA even coming close to picking up anything like Expedition 33. I think it's impossible.
really set me off. The minute I started thinking about it, I was like, man, that's probably the biggest, clearest difference between these two sides of the industry. One is actively running away from limitations. The other one is thriving inside of them. The more hardship they're under, the better their games come out. And that makes a lot of sense if you think about just the history of the games industry, because most of these studios came, I mean, EA or Activision or BioWare or whoever else. When you start going down the list of all these studios, most of these guys, when they started their studios, they had no idea what they were doing. They had no clue. They were figuring it out on the fly. There weren't any actual disciplines. You can go get a degree in game design or anything like that. You weren't a professional game designer.
No.
So it makes a lot of sense that you have this studio that came out of nowhere that's essentially doing it as old school as possible, that makes something that resonates in a way that old school games used to. You know, I think looking at it as well, if you look at just like AI tools, you look at the way that a lot of these companies are engaging with AI right now, that also shows a clear difference in perspective between AAA and the indie side or independent side of the industry.
Sorry to interrupt, LD. I personally, the problem for me when it comes to video games, because people have a range of problems when it comes to video games, when it comes to video games and AI. My problem with AI stems when it's used to speed something up that could have been done better. I think it is foolish to say that AI is not used or shouldn't be used. It is a tool. It is like anything else in gaming, in the real world. It is the same as, let's say 200 years ago. Instead of having a ratchet spanner, right? So it's the one that you hold the thing down on top and then you wind it back and forth, sort of thing. Instead you'd just have a regular spanner, and it's that sort of advancement and quickening of something that AI brings to the table for the software industry. Now, don't believe for a second that I think that AI should be making video games in its entirety. As I said, I think that AI being used as a tool is fine. However, AI being the final product, I think, is a ruining of the art form. So, like, for example, I think that placeholders are fine. I think, like, doing stuff in the background is fine. Handling things that the creators shouldn't have to do so they can focus on the things that the player see and feel and stuff like that. But doing what, for example, Call of Duty did, where they made all of their, like, commendations and, like, rewards AI generated things, rather than having an artist come along and essentially redo them for, like, over the AI stuff. No. Big no.
The people that genuinely care, the people that are working out of the hardest, they see it as a tool. They see it as something to mold with or play with or something to get the juices flowing or whatever it might be. But you go and you look over at AAA, AAA sees it as a one-stop solution. They see it as something that
exactly. If you're using it as a solution to your problems, then you shouldn't be making games. Plain and simple.
Be able to do everything they want it to do, whether that's fix all of their code, whether that's create assets for art for them to use inside their video games. They see it as a way to cheapen the process, to quicken the process, to remove friction from the process, where these independent studios and these indie studios are seeing it as just another way for them to be creative. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did enjoy the video, like the video, subscribe to the channel.
Very, very good video here from LD. Go if seriously, guys, if you haven't seen LD, you haven't heard of him, you haven't subbed to him, please go and subscribe to him. His capacity for doing gaming journalism, he's probably the only gaming journalist out there that you can trust without really doing your own research, because I know a lot of people out there don't. So, I mean, obviously you should, but if you want to trust a motherfucker, you trust him. This guy knows what he's on about. Very, very good video from LD. I'll share that with you guys there. For us, we're going to continue. We're going to probably play a game. I don't know. I'll make a poll. You guys can decide. For you on YouTube, I probably won't end up catching you tomorrow, like I said, because, well, I'm going to be doing the DLC, and I want to do that in my own time. But I'll probably end up seeing you on my Saturday, most of your guys' Friday. So, yeah. Anyways, see ya. Bye. Yeah, exactly, right.